Welcome to the New Life Podcast. Today we are going to be talking about prayer and fasting and why you should do it in your personal life as well as a church. So we are in the middle of our prayer and fast week. Well, you are. I am not fasting this year.
Yeah.
I have a valid reason.
Yeah.
Growing a second human.
The baby won't let you.
Yeah. I don't think
fast.
the doctor would advise that.
Yeah.
So you get to not eat while I eat snacks all day.
Yeah.
Fair.
I'm gonna have to be in a completely separate room to be able to make it through the fast. And I'm not sure when this comes out if we'll be done with the fast or either way. When we're recording this, we haven't quite. We're almost there. We're almost about to start. Just a couple days, and then I'll get to dread the not eating part. But yeah, so we're talking about fasting today, and I know that's probably not on everybody's top list of things they like to do.
We probably lost like half the people. They clicked off as soon as they heard. They're like, no, not this.
Fasting is not something, and even I've heard pastors too just talk about there that goes. So I taped up these cardboard boxes to limit the light, so now Savannah will be nice and radiant.
Yeah, I'll have a lovely reflection.
That's okay. We'll just keep going. But I've even heard a lot of pastors talk about fasting and kind of almost like, that's just not something we do anymore. And I always ask why. Like if we see it in the Bible all the time. Why do you feel like it's not like something that's still important to do or still beneficial to do? And I think a lot of times, it's because, people just, it's a hindrance, right? It's you're limiting yourself, and it's kind of a sacrificial type of thing that people don't really enjoy in their life.
Yeah, the only time you think about doing it is like when you're going to a doctor's appointment and they're like, you have to fast for 24 hours before the surgery.
Yeah. But we fasted, I think in our church at New Life Fellowship, we fasted, I think in 2018 was the first time, but it might have been 2017. It's around there when we started fasting. And we fasted all different types of ways. We fasted for 3 days. We fasted for 5 days. We fasted for every Monday for a whole month. At a certain time from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. or 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. or whatever. There's all different types of ways we've tried to fast and just what's the best, and just those different types of fast. And I remember the one time we fasted, it was like the biggest fast we ever did. It was for 5 days, 5 full days, like not just at a time. It was 24 hours.
Yeah, the tough one.
It was tough, and I remember a lot of people didn't make it because that's a lot. That's a long time not to eat. And only to drink water, or I kind of cheat sometimes and I like to do orange juice.
Yeah, we're orange juice people. Every time the fast is coming up, like our Kroger pickup will know because we order a ton of orange juice.
Yeah, it's just all orange juice. Yeah. And but I remember this 5-day fast, and it was, but what was really cool about this 5-day fast is I had a group of guys. I think you were probably in college at the time.
Probably.
And we had these group of guys here at the church, and we were going to do it together. We were going to hold each other accountable. We were going to encourage one another, and anything else. Someone might slip and they ate a cracker or something like that, just to hold them over. Still encourage them to keep going, not to quit the fast. And I remember after these 5 days were up, we're like, we're going to go out to eat. We're going to go to Texas Roadhouse.
The best restaurant ever.
Yeah, that's Savannah's favorite restaurant. She loves the rolls there. She would go there probably every time we go out 100%. To eat. And I would be the best husband if I figured out how to make those rolls and the butter that you dip it in.
You did say you want to make bread.
Yeah,
so here you go.
That's a whole nother hobby that I'm looking into, but it probably actually won't happen. But anyway, so this fast that we did or whatever is really tough. Went to Texas Roadhouse, and we just scarfed down the food that was there. We got a couple appetizers, and we were eating. And I remember that was the worst decision of, I think most of all, I think there's 5 or 6 of us that did it. And I'd say at least half of them, people got sick. So just for future reference, if you have joined us in the fast or whatever, don't eat a bunch after you fast.
You will regret it.
You want to take small steps back to eating normal.
Yeah. I don't have anything crazy like that. I think most of my first fast I was in college. So it was more just we would have these weekly dinners where it's like, oh, all the RAs would go out to eat, or you go out to eat with your floor on certain days. And it's like we would be doing these like prayer and fast moments, and I would still go to like hang out, but I wouldn't eat, and everyone would be like, well, why aren't you eating? And as soon as you're like, oh, like we're praying and fasting as a church, they look at you like you're crazy. Mm-hmm. They're like, well, why would you do that?
Yeah. I remember when, because I was working, before I was the associate pastor here, I was working at a heating and cooling company. And not just the one guy that I worked with, I've worked with lots of different guys as a helper. And I remember every time we get to lunch and I'm not eating anything, they're like, well, what's happening? Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, I'm fasting at our church. And they were like, very confused.
Yeah.
Like, what is that? What is that? Why are you fasting? So it actually was a really good opportunity when we were doing the fast to share about the Lord and why we fast, why I'm trying to draw closer to the Lord. It was like a really good opportunity to just to open the door for conversation.
Yeah.
With people.
Well, and especially just after years of doing it, now that we've had like these opportunities to pray and fast, but then see like God answer those prayers, mm-hmm. it does. Like you said, it gives you good opportunities to share with people like what God is doing and what he can do and just how powerful these moments are now that we've seen multiple years of God answering mm-hmm. the prayers that we have prayed for.
And so we fasted since 2017, 2018. Every year it seems, every time around this fast mm-hmm. in January, it seems to draw us closer as a church. Together, we're talking about what we want the Lord to do. We're talking about what we want the Lord, what we want to see the Lord do in our life. And, some of the things that we've fasted for in the past were pretty big things.
Yeah.
I remember the first big thing that we prayed and fasted for was as a church, we were low, we weren't growing, we were kind of struggling in our leadership a little bit when it just comes spiritually. Mm-hmm. We were doing it, we were kind of going through the motions, but our heart wasn't in it like it should be. So I remember one of the things we prayed and fasted for is that God wouldn't give us a visitor in the church for 6 months. And that was like a big thing. Like what church does that?
Yeah.
What church?
Most churches will look at you like you're crazy for doing that.
Yeah, and we've shared this story before with other churches. And they do. They're like, it doesn't make any sense, because as a church, you're kind of pushing. You want people to come.
You want new people, yeah.
You want visitors. And because you want to grow and you want to see more people's lives devoted to the Lord and all those things. And we did too. But we knew that we weren't going to keep them if we weren't spiritually ready for the growth. Mm-hmm. And I remembered after that 6 months, like the first Sunday after that 6 months, we got a visitor. And I think that was just confirmation that we were praying and fasting for the right things. And the Lord heard us and the Lord answered us. Mm-hmm. And then we prayed for baptisms and salvations. Yeah. And we prayed for finances and growth in the ministries and the church. And not everything is always a yes. Mm-hmm. But I think the Lord sees faithfulness. And I would say a lot of them are yes. They're not maybe not in a year. Maybe it's a couple of years down the road. That's why we never forget what we were praying and fasting for, because God, it might take more than a year for you to get what you're asking for from the Lord.
Well, I mean, we saw that with praying for baptisms, not this past year, but a couple years ago. We had a pretty high, I don't remember the exact number, but we were asking for quite a few baptisms, and it didn't happen in the first year. But we continued, and then the following year had continued to pray and fast for the remaining amount, and then God provided, and mm-hmm. he was like, okay, not 1 year, but 2 is what it's going to take. But I think that showed our faithfulness, like you were saying, because we didn't give up and say, oh, well, guess that's not what God wanted to happen, or mm-hmm. it was like, okay, we just need to keep praying for it and keep sharing the gospel, and God's going to make that happen. And like you said, I think it does bring the church closer, because then we continued to pray for baptisms. And this past year, we asked for 20 baptisms and we saw 23. And I think just watching how the church responded to that mm-hmm. was really exciting, because, I mean, the whole church knows our prayer and fast list as a church. So then as you're seeing it start to happen, I think it just started to get people really excited and really just encourage them because they're seeing big things happen like right in front of them. You can't deny that like God is doing something.
Yeah. And, with the 23 baptism we got last year, there was so much excitement built around because every time we had a baptism, it was always a reminder of what we did pray and fast for. And I think a lot of times this is what we're missing out on in the Christian life is fasting because it drives us to be specific.
Yeah.
It drives us to be intentional with our prayers, not just do kind of, Lord, thank you for this day, help me this week and the things that, we do.
Yeah.
But no, you're praying specifically, and then when it's answered, then, you know where it's coming from.
Yeah, you can look back and see, yeah, God did do this because your prayers were specific.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like the biggest question, I think pastors and just people in the church or even outside the church is why.
Yeah.
Why fast? If the Lord hears our prayers, why fast then? Why go the next step? Because that's kind of what fasting it seems to be. It's like
a big step.
It's the next step. It's like I'm praying for it, but I'm about to get serious about it, right? And that's when fasting comes in.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people have this question of why fast, and the Bible's scattered with examples of fasting.
Yeah, I think one of the coolest examples I saw just through looking through all the examples in the Old and the New Testament was looking at Matthew 6:16, and he talks about a few different things with like fasting throughout this section. But I thought it was cool that when you look at the way the verse is written, it says when you fast, not if you fast. And I think that's where we kind of go back to what we were saying at the beginning, where it's like we see fasting throughout the whole Bible, but so often that's not something we do as Christians. But like Jesus is telling disciples, like, no, this is supposed to be a part of the Christian walk. Like when you do this, not, well, if you feel like doing it, here's some tips. It's like, no, like we're called to do it.
Yeah, and I like that because, it's not like especially in the New Testament, there was never a moment where they were never confused when Jesus was like, oh, fast. Like, oh, what's that? No, they knew exactly what fasting was because they did it. It was part of their routine. And I think even there was moments where, a man came up to Jesus. I can't remember if it was the rich young ruler or if it was somebody else now off the top of my head, but I think he said something like, I've fasted. I've kept the commandment. I fast like twice a day. What else am I lacking? That type of thing. So people, that was a routine in people's lives. Like, oh, you want to draw closer with the Lord? You want to get serious about sin or whatever? You are going to fast about it. And I think some of the examples that are in the Bible, as we see like with Nehemiah, when he notices that the walls are still broken, it says that he wept and fasted for brokenness. And I think why we should fast is because we're broken about something.
Yeah.
We're upset. And I remember, one of the things that I prayed and fasted in the past was that we would have a baby. And like over the years, your heart just starts to break a little bit more because that's not happening. And I remember and now we're going to have a baby in August. And I remember those years that I prayed and fasted for that the Lord would bless us with a baby. Those meant something then, even now, today. And I think that, when your heart breaks, sometimes you need to fast, forever how long, but you need to fast and you need to draw closer with the Lord. And then you see, all these types of examples, like even like the city of Nineveh. When Jonah's like, even though he wasn't happy that he had to do it, but when he's like, hey, God's going to destroy you if you don't get it right, if you don't check yourself. And when the king heard that message, he got serious about it. Not just, oh, Lord, I'm sorry for what I've done. No, he said, I'm in a state of mourning. We're going to fast.
Yeah. He
we
had
don't want that to happen.
everyone fast.
Hmm. And all the way down to the animals. Everyone putting on sackcloth. Everyone's in this state of mourning. We need to fast because of the sin that we've committed before the Lord. And sometimes we're in that moment. Sometimes we're in the sin. And sometimes to bounce back, sometimes we need to fast.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need to ask the Lord for forgiveness, and we need to fast so that we can get back in a right relationship with Him.
But I think it's also important to remember too that like fasting doesn't always have to be like when things are hard or broken or wrong. Like you can fast just to worship God and give Him praise. We see that in the New Testament with Anna the prophetess.
Yeah.
That's a hard word to say. But I mean, she was fully devoted to the Lord, and it says in Luke 2, like she worshiped God through prayer and fasting, and that was a way that she honored God. So it's like it doesn't always have to be for something like big and heavy. Like sometimes we can just be doing it out of praise and worship. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think fasting it's a forgotten act of worship. It's something that shows the Lord, I'm humbling myself. I'm giving up something of necessity, and I'm allowing you to be the provider. I'm allowing you to fill that necessity in my life. That's literally the idea of fasting, right? You're giving something up so the Lord can come and fill the emptiness that you feel. And that draws you closer with the Lord. And I think now it's real bright.
No, it's real bright. The video's just going to keep changing.
Yeah, exactly. Just keeps adjusting. But there's so many different things. You can see Jesus fast, right?
Yeah.
And I always say if Jesus does it, we should do it.
Yeah. The ultimate example right there.
Yeah. He fasted for 40 days. Now, that's pretty tough to do that. But and why he fasted was he was getting ready to jump into his ministry, right?
He had a big calling.
Right. He's about to walk a lot of persecution, a lot of suffering, but also to help brokenness and compassion and heal and to bind up the wounds of the sick and to raise the dead. So many different examples, and it started with fasting. Really, It started with this moment of drawing closer with the Lord, to understanding the will of God, and doing that through fasting and going. And then you even see in Acts so many different times the church is praying and fasting for leaders, and when they're commissioning Paul and Barnabas out to go share the gospel, they fast. They pray and they fast and they lay hands on. Fasting was a part of all that. It's a vital part of the Bible.
Yeah.
And and I wonder, all these times, I looked it up. So how many times is fasting mentioned in the Bible? 77 times fasting.
Probably makes it pretty important if it's that many times.
It's in the Bible a lot. Throughout the Old Testament, throughout the New Testament. It's not an old thing. It's in the New Testament too. Yeah. And it's scattered throughout. And I wonder if it's in there so much, why we're not doing it. And I think it's because we've forgotten the why.
Yeah.
We've forgotten why it's important. We've forgotten what it can do to our Christian walk. One of the things that jumped out to me when I was thinking, well, what can fasting do in our life and what can it benefit us, is that it can transform your life. It can give you a fresh start. And I think a lot of people need that.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
A lot of people need a fresh start, a fire that's lit inside them again, right? Maybe you've been doing the Christian life for a long time now, and you kind of feel stagnant. A lot of people have been there before.
Yeah, it's easy just to get caught up in just like the motions every day, just doing what you're used to doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the ways to get out of that rut is not just praying. Sometimes praying and fasting. And I always try to ask myself at the beginning of every year when, as a church, we're going to, because fasting gets put on our minds. It does also in the middle. We'll pray and fast again in the middle. We recap in
August
and then it gets reminded again that, is there something in my life that needs prayer and fasting? Is there something major I need done? Or I'm in a tough spot, or I'm in a rut or whatever and I can't get out? this is a good time to fast for it, right? Because it can transform my life. It can change my life. It can put me back to where I need to go. And it's a way of humbling myself.
Yeah.
Right? It's a way of saying, Lord, you're God.
Yeah. It puts the focus back on God,
Mm-hmm.
and off these outside things or off of ourselves.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes we need that. Sometimes we need humbling, because we've taken the reins of life. And sometimes we need prayer and we need fasting to humble ourselves, to put us back in the place where the Lord has the reins of our lives and we no longer have the reins. And fasting helps us to start relying on God more.
Yeah.
Because there are days it's like, Lord, you gotta help me today because, I don't know if I'm gonna fail. I'm gonna trip up because I want a snack.
Yeah.
I'm a midnight snack guy.
Yeah.
And even the thought of not having the snack is enough agony sometimes.
It's like you're not even actually
I'm not
hungry.
even hungry. I'm so built a routine in my life. I'm eating at this time.
Yeah.
And now I'm not. It's just a good way now, Lord, you got to help me. Right? I got to rely on the Lord.
But I think it also too just helps believers grow in their maturity in their walk too. I mean, because like you said, this fasting is not easy. It really is kind of like this next step. So you have to really feel like you're committed to it, and you have to be intentional when you're praying through it and reading, because it's not going to be like I can just do this and it's going to work out. You're probably going to fail if that's your mindset of it's fine, I can do this, it'll be easy. No, you have to really be intentional. Okay, this is why I'm doing it. This is what I'm going to pray and fast for. And this is how I'm going to go about doing it. And be just really structured with what you're doing.
Yeah, you got to be specific, right?
Yeah.
You've got to have intentionality when you're fasting. Just saying, hey, I'm fasting, that doesn't mean a lot. You got to know why you're doing it.
Yeah.
Why are you fasting? Because that's going to help you.
Yeah.
If you just say, well, yeah, we fast, at this time, then you're probably not going to make it.
Yeah.
And if not, and even if you do make it, it didn't really mean a whole lot.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's just, well, I didn't eat for 12 hours, but you missed out on gaining so much because you weren't using it as an opportunity to draw closer to God, to be specific with your prayer and just specific with your time. It's almost like a waste.
Yeah, you might as well just say.
Yeah, you just eating food. Why'd you do this to yourself?
Yeah, and so I think the first question is the biggest question: why you should fast. Second question is how.
Yeah.
A lot of people, well, how do you fast? Okay, is it food? Is it not food? Is it certain different things? Is it a certain amount of time? So, there's lots of different ways to fast.
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's necessarily a 100% right way to do it, which is nice because it's okay, I can't mess this up, right?
Yeah. So, I think it's a good way just to think about it is, just every time that fasting is mentioned in the Bible, it is talking about food. So if you can do that, everybody's at different places. Everyone has different health issues. Don't put yourself in a spot where you're going to be physically harmed because you're fasting. Right? There's other things you can do to draw closer with the Lord. You can fast from different things.
I like to think about it that if you're not doing food, this is just my personal thought, is I like to think about, okay, well, what could you sacrifice? What could you give up? That's something that's almost taking away from your time with God. So in my head, I'm if I'm going to give up something that's not food, maybe I should give up social media. Maybe I should give up TV, because these are things where it's about myself and my interest and my entertainment, but then I'm not. Instead, I could be spending time with God and praying.
Yeah, and I think the idea is, so food is a necessity in our life. Give up something that's a necessity. Don't give up something you can give up.
Yeah.
Because it's useless at that point. You might as well not give it up because it doesn't do anything. The whole idea of fasting is limiting yourself.
Yeah.
Right? It's giving something up. so that the Lord can come in.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how, when it comes to those things. But there's lots of different types of fast. You have like a complete fast, which is food, and you're only drinking water, maybe a little bit of juice. You have like a partial fast, which is maybe a certain type of food. We see that Daniel gave up meat in the book of Daniel when he did a fast. He only ate vegetables, and it was for a long time. I think it was like 40 days or something like that too. I could be off a little bit, but I just know he gave up meat. Some people call it like a Daniel fast. And so that's a partial fast. Or a partial fast is when you're only fasting for a specific time of the day. So not the whole day.
Yeah.
Complete fast is fasting the whole day, 24 hours. A partial fast is maybe you're giving up from a certain time frame. Maybe you're giving up lunch. Maybe you're giving up dinner. Maybe you're giving up breakfast. That kind of meal that is the most necessity in your life. The one you crave.
Yeah, it's like if you don't eat breakfast, probably don't give up breakfast because you're not doing anything different.
And so there's different things like that. But there's also private fast. When you go in and people don't need to know you're fasting. Jesus talks about this. Don't let people know that you're fasting. Don't like, oh yeah, I haven't been fasting for 3 so everybody sees that you're fasting, and you're not fasting for the right reasons, right? There's private fast, but then there's also corporate fasting, and that's what we do here at New Life.
Yeah,
is we're fasting together. So we're going to talk about it. We're going to encourage each other.
Yeah.
We're going to lift each other up. That's not as private, and you see that throughout the Old Testament all the time. The leader of the group of people is like, hey, we're going to fast for a victory, or we're going to fast because we fell into sin, or all different types of examples. We want the Lord to protect us. We're going to fast. And they do it together as a nation. City of Nineveh did it together as a nation, right? They're private fast and corporate fast. So all different types of fast.
And I feel like, we were talking about this a little bit before, like for us, I think the corporate fast is really like beneficial because both of us personally probably wouldn't ever think to fast or like would have ever started. Maybe now that we've done it like corporately for so many years, like now when things come up, like we're probably more willing to be like, okay, I'm going to also fast for this. But I think it's a good way to kind of step into it because like you said, you do have that accountability. You're not like alone. So you have people who can kind of help you, encourage you not to give up when it does get challenging. So, and that doesn't necessarily have to be like a whole church. Like maybe you just find a group of people.
Yeah, maybe it is just a couple people.
Yeah.
Maybe you have a health thing going on. Find some people and say, hey, can you pray and fast for me for a day or for lunch or whatever? Just a specific time. And I think that's important, like how you fast. Those are the different ways, but also is you've got to prep your heart, right?
Yeah.
You've got to come in saying, Lord, I want you to do something. I want this answered, right? My back's against the wall. I need this to happen. Yeah. So you're going to fast any of those different ways, right? And then you're just going to see what the Lord does. But you got to prepare your heart for it. Your heart you got to be specific, like we said. You've got to prepare your heart. And then you've got to trust that the Lord's going to come through.
Yeah.
You can't doubt.
Yeah.
Right? It's tempting to doubt. Satan would love for you to doubt the things that you're fasting for.
And especially because oftentimes I feel like when you are doing a prayer and fast, a lot of times the prayers are usually big prayers that you're going in for. And so I think it makes it 10 times easier to have that doubt because you're like, this is a massive request that we're asking here.
And we'll talk about some of the things that we're praying and fasting for the church. And just some of these big things are only going to take the Lord's hand. Like, we're not going to be able to do it ourselves because either we've tried to do it and they've failed or because they're just big things that our church isn't capable of doing by themselves. We need the Lord's help. And I think, some of these things that we're praying and fasting for this year is we prayed last year for 20 baptisms. And I know a lot of people are like, well, let's, maybe we shouldn't or pull back this year or not pray for something different this year and then go back to the 20 baptisms. But I think everybody was so excited that even just for one baptism, let alone we had 23 in 2024. So we're going to pray for 20 baptisms again and just see what the Lord does. Maybe we double that or just, we just never know. But keeping the lost in the forefront of our prayer and fasting is so vital for the heart of New Life Fellowship. And I think it's probably one of the most seen things that we do.
Yeah.
It's something that it's like almost like a tangible thing that people like. Wow, there's one, there's two, there's three. Wow, look at what the Lord's doing. Oh, we're at 15. Wow, it keeps.
It's very visible.
And there's something on this list like, man, we don't know if the Lord's going to do it until the end of 2025 or till 2026 or 2027 or whenever. We're not
whatever
sure the time
his plan
frame.
is. Yeah.
Another thing is, our church still does track music. We have been praying and fasting for a praise band, I think, for the last 3 years.
It's been on the list for a while.
And I know we've prayed about praise band even before that, but putting on our prayer and fasting list is a praise band, letting people use the gifts God gave them to worship the Lord in all different areas. If you have a talent for playing music, letting you be able to do that, and the church be a part of that. And we want to see that happen. And I think we're getting closer. We're seeing some fruit for it, but we still need the Lord's help to kind of get it off the ground, step away from doing track music. Again, nothing wrong with doing that. Every church is in different spots. But again, letting people use their gifts and be able to worship the Lord all together, using our gifts and our talents to praise the Lord is such a huge piece.
Yeah. Something else that's on the list that we also were praying and fasting for last year was this church plant. So New Life is branching out and sending a church plant, which I believe that's going to be coming up here soon.
Next week, I'll talk to Phil on the podcast just about what this church plant looks like, how it got started, how he got the call, and just kind of where we're at and how we can help and
how you support. Just completely uprooted his life with one sermon.
that I'm sure we'll talk about that too.
But we've been. I mean, that's been on the list. This is our second year now of just continuing to pray and fast for that, because I mean that's a big call that even once they're out and like the church is going, like they still are going to need support. And I mean, prayer is one of the best ways we can support them.
Yeah, and we've never done this before. No. We've never sent another church out. We've never supported a pastor who's here and now he's feel called to start a church. So this is going to be a great experience, and we need the Lord's help. They need the Lord's help. New Song needs the Lord's help. And we need the Lord's help so that we can encourage better, so that we can support them better, and when we can celebrate with them when they do get it started, because they will get it started. And I know there's many different things in our ministries as well. We're praying for 7 mission teams this year, which is a lot of mission teams.
You're going to be busy.
And we already have, I think we have like 5 or 6 on the schedule, and then a few others that are on. But
there's a few tentatives that like dates are trying to be figured out.
Yeah, and you never know because life happens.
Yeah.
Sometimes the church is like, we're coming at this time, and just for this year, it just wasn't able to happen. Something came up in the church, van broke down, all sorts of different things limit missions teams from coming, because it's a big commitment to make, and sometimes you're not able to go for lots of different reasons. But we're praying for 7 mission teams because we got a lot to get done. We have a lot of projects.
Big projects.
A lot of things that need to be done in the ministries, and we need help in a lot of different areas. And part of that is that we're praying and fasting for something that we've been praying and fasting for a while. It's kind of a large chunk of money.
Yeah.
We're praying for $600,000 this year in 2025, in 1 year, to get to fundraise in the ministries. That in the ministries will meet our budget, and that will have extra for projects or whatever the Lord is calling us to, that will have some funds to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's not often that we have extra. Yeah, and usually we have just enough.
Yeah, we're scraping the barrel most of the time.
Yeah.
And when you talk about this number with people, the 600,000, you almost see it in their face that they, maybe not that they doubt, but they say, "Wow, that's asking a lot," right? And it is for our church, because we never have ever even come close to doing that in a year. So it is a big ask. But again, with all this, why are you asking for it?
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about it during our prayer and fasting, during our vision day, why we want the Lord to do all these things. They're not just so that, hey, it's because we want it, because they'll do something in the kingdom of God. They'll benefit, they'll lift up the Lord's name, and they'll glorify Him, and they'll help the lost and the brokenhearted and those that are depressed and that are filled with anxiety, that are hungry, that need a place to stay. All that is involved in what we pray and fast for every year, because that is what God's called us to do. I think that's important for us to kind of put in the front of our minds, is when you are thinking about it, ask the Lord what He wants. Don't just say, this is what I want, Lord, do what I want.
Yeah.
Lord, what do you want? Because all these things we're praying and fasting, yeah, we want them. But we want them because we've prayed and we've asked the Lord what His will is for the church. And these are the things that come up that go along with His will, that will help us accomplish the mission that He's commissioned us to.
Yeah. And I think we said this earlier too. It's important to remember that sometimes the answer isn't always just yes right away, or like, here it is. It's not like we're going to maybe pray for these. There's 12 things on this list. And then the next day it's like, here's everything. I mean, it might happen. That would be crazy. We'll keep you updated. But it's like, sometimes it takes a while, or maybe the answer is just no.
Yeah.
Or it's just like, okay, not yet. And you have to be willing to hear that answer, but also accept that answer when it comes through. And maybe like this list, it's maybe a little bit different because Jimmy spends a lot of time like praying before this list is even created. Yeah. So there's a lot of time that goes into it. But prayer and fast isn't just like, we're doing it corporately, but it's not just for the church and the ministries. It's also a time for us to do a personal like prayer and fast request. And it's always every year Jimmy's like, make sure if there's something personal. So I know, like for me this year, for so many years we've been praying for God to bless us with a child, and so God has done that. So I've had to change my request. But this year I've decided to kind of take it more so off myself a little bit, and more put it out for someone else. And so I'm personally praying and fasting for salvation for my grandparents who live here in town. And I mean, it's been something I've been praying for multiple years, but like you said, sometimes there's just that moment where you're like, okay, now this needs to be like a prayer and a fast, like, and just really taking it serious. And so that's my personal fasting and prayer topic. But what about you?
I think what I'm praying and fasting for this year for in my own personal life is that, so last year, the year before, technically at the end of 2023, is we had the Lord blessed us with a child, but then we lost it. And then now, for this prayer and fasting, we got specific in our prayers about, Lord, we want this baby, before the prayer and fasting, and the Lord answered that. And now I'm going to pray and fast that the Lord just allows us to take it all the way to the end. That we'll get to hold this baby and love on this baby and do all the things that you want to do when through a pregnancy, and all the things you think about. So that's what I'm praying and fasting for this year. And if you're not convinced yet about fasting, I just want to read 5 verses really quick. They're not very long, about just what the Bible says about fasting. And Joel 2:12 says, "Yet even now declares the Lord, return to me with your heart, with fasting, with weeping, and with mourning." Ezra 8:23 says, "So we fasted and implored our God for this, and he listened to our entreaty." Psalm 69:10 says, "When I wept and humbled my soul with fasting, it became my reproach." Acts 14:23 says, "And when they had appointed elders for them in every church with prayer and fasting, they committed them to the Lord in whom they had believed." Psalms 35:13 says, "But I, when they were sick, I wore sackcloth, I afflicted myself with fasting, I prayed with head bowed on my chest." So many different examples throughout the whole Bible that calls us to fast for all different types of things. Sin, brokenness, those that are sick, commissioning, those for the mission in the Christian life. All things can be prayed and fasted for. So I challenge those that are listening, watching this podcast, that if you've never tried it, if you said, "Oh, I've never fasted before," for that, maybe you fasted for health reasons, praise the Lord for that if it helped you. Sometimes fasting can't help physically, but I mean spiritually, what it can do for your spiritual life. I challenge you to try it and just see what the Lord does in your life. Just Lord, I'm praying and fasting. Just, Lord, do something in my life, whatever that may be in your life, and be specific about it so that you'll know that the Lord is answering you. But you have any comments?
No, I mean, definitely I recommend, like you said, trying it, and don't feel like your first time that you do it, it has to be this crazy, like, week long. Like, it's okay to go in starting small. Like, okay, I'm going to pray and fast for this thing, and I'm going to just pray and fast for 24 hours. And just start small. And just, God can do mighty things no matter how long you pray and fast for.
God will bless your fasting. In a lot of different ways, but He will bless your faithfulness when it comes to fasting. So try it.
And
do
be
it.
easy on yourself. It's if you mess up, if you have to eat, like, it's okay.
Just keep going.
Yes.
Wow, it was too much. You ate some crackers or whatever. You ate a bowl of soup. Whatever. Pick it back up. Don't just drop it and say, "Well, I failed." Try it again.
Because God will see your faithfulness through that.
Absolutely. So that concludes our episode for this week. If you are praying and fasting for anything, just comment down below. We'd love to hear what you're praying and fasting for in 2025. We would love for you to like and share. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. We have a goal for 2025. By June, hopefully, we have 50 subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed yet, just make sure that you subscribe,
share it with all your friends,
all those different things. And if you have any suggestions for any episodes, you can comment or you can email us at I'm not sure our old podcast, but at New Life Fellowship 2001 at gmail.com. And as always, just thank you for watching and listening to New Life Podcast.